Everyone, this is a presentation on the repair and deduct method for tenants in California. The first topic I'm going to cover, this is one that I am frequently asked about and which is very practical and important for all tenants in California to know and fully understand. It's also a concept that is widely misunderstood. So in this video, I will cover the basics and try to clear up some common misconceptions. Before I get into the specifics of the repair and deduct rule, it's imperative to first understand what landlords are required to do in terms of maintaining a rental property for their tenants. A lot of people come to me and ask about the repair and deduct method for something that the landlord wasn't even required to maintain in the first place. So this is extremely important to understand before even talking about applying the repair and deduct method. This is a list that covers the basic responsibilities of all landlords in California. It is not a comprehensive list, but it covers the general categories that repairs usually fall under, and which I have found to be the most pertinent for the repair and deduct rule. The first requirement is providing hot running water, which should be in the sinks, showers, and bathtubs. Notice that this is not warm water that's required. Hot water is required. So if the water is warm but not hot, this requirement is not met. The second requirement is that the exterior doors to the property must be secure and lockable. So they must shut tightly without any significant space that poses a security risk and which protects from weather like rain or wind. And there must be functional locks on all exterior doors for the security of the tenants. This includes side doors, back doors, and front doors. The third is secure windows. Windows must be secure and functional, meaning they can be opened and closed and lock properly. Windows that are stuck in the closed position or stuck in the open position, or windows with large gaps around the edges, windows that are broken, or windows that are missing locks or which have locks that are not functional, are all considered safety hazards and they must be repaired. The fourth requirement is heat. This may seem like an unlikely requirement in Southern California, but in fact, this is a requirement for all landlords in California, including Southern California. Landlords must provide a working heating system to keep the unit warm in cold weather. Failure to provide heat makes the unit uninhabitable. Fifth is working plumbing. The plumbing system, including sinks, toilets, and showers, must be in good working order. This means there can be no major leaks, blockages, or sewage backups. The toilet must flush, and the shower and sink drains must completely drain. Any serious plumbing issues that impact sanitation or water supply must be fixed promptly. And I will get into that in the later slide where we go over examples. I will explain what promptly means, in my opinion. Any flooding of sinks or showers would make the rental property, or at least a portion of the rental property, uninhabitable. One important thing to note here is that if there's only one bathroom with one toilet in the unit, and that toilet does not work, the entire unit is uninhabitable. If there is only one shower in the rental property and the shower does not work, there is an argument to be made that the entire property is uninhabitable as well. And that would warrant the tenant staying in an Airbnb or motel or hotel until that problem is solved. Sixth is sanitary living space. The landlord must ensure that the property is sanitary, and this covers several sub-requirements. The rental unit must be kept free from significant mold, pests like cockroaches, ants, rodents, or bedbugs, and other health hazards. If there's an infestation due to structural issues, like a gap in the wall or a hole in the wall, the landlord is responsible for pest control. Important thing to note here is that an infestation of any kind is almost always due to a structural issue. Even if the landlord tries to argue that the tenants were dirty, leaving food out, I have had cases where an expert testified that no amount of dirtiness could cause an infestation. The infestation is caused by a hole or gap in the wall. That being said, when the pest control people come to spray, the place should be clean. There should not be food left out because there's no reason to allow the landlord to make that argument. The seventh requirement is that the structure be safe and secure. The building must be structurally sound, so there cannot be any major leaks, weak ceilings, collapsing walls, or unstable flooring that could pose a safety risk. Any serious structural issues must be addressed immediately. Many of my cases have involved sizable holes in the walls and ceiling. If there is a sizable hole in the wall or ceiling, this is an urgent habitability issue that must be resolved. The next requirement is adequate trash receptacles. Landlords must provide properly sized trash bins for tenants to dispose of garbage. This ensures tenants have access to regular trash collection services. If the trash bins are overflowing or if the trash bins are infested with bugs, this would constitute an unsanitary condition and violate this requirement. Now, with regard to recycling, tenants in California are entitled to access to recycling bins if they live in a multifamily residential property which requires an apartment complex with 5 or more units. This is under the statewide mandatory recycling law, AB 341, and organic waste law, SB 1383. These laws only apply to multifamily properties with 5 or more units. So duplexes, a building with 2 units, are generally exempt from the mandate requiring landlords to provide recycling services. Now, if recycling bins is a requirement in the lease, then it would be a breach of the lease not to provide recycling bins. But safe electrical and gas systems. Every rental property must have electrical wiring, outlets, and gas lines that are in good working order and up to code. This is to prevent fire hazards or carbon monoxide leaks. Landlords are responsible for fixing exposed wires, malfunctioning outlets, and gas leaks. Smoke and carbon monoxide detectors must also be installed and maintained. Please check for these in your unit. And also, I need to note here that if you have a carbon monoxide leak or if you have a gas leak in your unit, your first response should not be to call the landlord or the property manager, although you should inform them at some point. But your first response should be to exit the rental property with your family members and your pets. Your second move should be to call the gas company. There should be a 24-hour hotline for every gas company, and they will respond promptly to an emergency such as a gas leak or a carbon monoxide leak. And I want to go over some of the common misconceptions about what landlords are not responsible for. Unfortunately, even in Southern California, as far as landlords in California goes, providing air conditioning is not required for the property to be considered habitable. There can be different requirements imposed by cities and counties, but as far as California state law goes, air conditioning is not required to keep the property habitable. Second, replacing light bulbs or batteries for smoke detectors is not required to keep the property habitable. Cosmetic repairs are not required to keep the property habitable. And when I say that they are not required to keep the property habitable, what I am saying is that they do not trigger the repair and deduct method, because the repair and deduct method is only applicable for habitability issues. Cosmetic repairs do not trigger the repair and deduct method. Cosmetic repairs are things like a peeling countertop, although if that is significant enough, it could pose a safety risk. But if you're complaining about something because it just looks bad, but does not pose any safety risk, does not affect the safety of a tenant, then it does not trigger the repair and deduct method, and it is not a habitability issue. Providing a security system or surveillance cameras is not required of landlords. This is something that frequently comes up when tenants have property stolen or there's a break-in. There is no state law that requires landlords to have a security system or surveillance cameras. Tenants have to provide that themselves if they want that. Okay, some examples is the water in a shower being warm but not hot, or the sink water not being hot. That would be a violation of the rule that requires hot running water in every unit, and that would potentially trigger the repair and deduct method. If the kitchen sink is clogged and will not drain, and this was not caused by the tenant, this would trigger the repair and deduct method. If the dishwasher is not working, this is not necessarily a habitability issue. If the front door deadbolt is not working, this is a habitability issue and triggers the repair and deduct method because it is a safety concern and because all landlords are required to provide doors that lock. And now I'm going to go to the instructions for repair and deduct. So once you have determined that an issue is an appropriate one for applying the repair and deduct method, meaning that it is a habitability issue, these are the steps that I recommend following. Now, these are not steps that are explicitly required by the law, but these are steps that I believe will protect you from the landlord claiming that they were not properly notified of the issue and that they were not given proper opportunity to resolve the issue themselves. So the first step is to notify the landlord in writing, warning that the tenant will repair and deduct if the issue is not resolved. This can be in a text message or email. I always recommend that tenants refrain from having verbal or in-person communications with their landlord. And if they accidentally do, or if the landlord seems to insist on it, then I would always follow up those meetings or those conversations with a text message or email uh, summarizing the conversation. So after that, you need to wait a reasonable time for the landlord to resolve the issue. Now, what is considered a reasonable time depends on what kind of issue it is. If your kitchen is flooding, then I would say a reasonable time to respond to this issue is a few hours. If there are several bathrooms in the unit and one of the toilets isn't working, I would say that a reasonable time is within a few days because there's other bathrooms in the unit. If there's only one bathroom and the toilet is not working, I would say that a reasonable time is within a few hours, at least within 24 hours. Then, if you have complained to the landlord in writing about the issue, and the landlord is either refusing to resolve the problem or refusing to respond properly, then what you need to do is obtain multiple estimates from professionals to repair the problem. So you don't want to go to the landlord with just one estimate. You want to give several options from different, like if they have to be licensed, then make sure that they are licensed. So to do electrical work, they need to be licensed electricians. To do plumbing work, they need to be licensed plumbers. If it's less intensive work, then it might not require licensed workers. You can look online to decipher that. But I would say to find at least 3 estimates that you can send to the landlord to show that there are 3 legitimate companies and these are the 3 prices that it will cost. Now, only proceed beyond this point if the cost is less than 1 month's rent. You cannot use the repair and deduct method if the cost of the repair is more than 1 month's rent. Then the next step is to inform the landlord in writing. Let me go back. When you present those estimates, you then give the landlord a few days to either choose one of those companies to hire or to hire their own repair person. Obviously, if this is an emergency issue, you can't wait that long. You have to determine what is reasonable based on common sense. The next step is to inform the landlord in writing of the date and time that the professional is coming to your unit to conduct the repair. And obviously include who that person is and what the company is. The next step is to document the repair with photographs, invoices, and receipts. I often instruct tenants to take a video of the repair. And last, the tenant can then deduct the repair costs from their next rent payment. And again, when the landlord is originally notified of the issue and the tenant has waited a reasonable time for the landlord to resolve the issue, at the time of obtaining multiple estimates and sending those to the landlord, the tenant should also say to the landlord in writing at that point that they are going to hire one of these professionals and deduct the cost from their next month's rent if the landlord does not respond properly. So that is part of step 3 on this list. This was a very brief overview, and so please contact me if you have more questions. My email is madeline@madforlaw.com.